Welcome to the Paru Zings, Appraisers on Purpose podcast. This podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? And what do they do now for their teams, their clients, and the industry? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Welcome back. It is another exciting opportunity to have a conversation with an industry peer. For those that might be joining us for the first time, thank you for accepting the invitation from your friend. Everybody, right now, go ahead and just take a moment to share this with just one peer who you know could use a little bit of insight, maybe some inspiration, maybe even a little bit of education, but not like course education, life education, the kind that comes from our peers sharing a little bit of their story about how they got from where they were to where they are to where they're going. Thanks again for joining us here for the Perusings podcast, The Power of Values. And I'm really excited that Brent Bowen is our guest this week. Brent, thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, Michael. I look forward to the conversation.
Appreciate it, buddy. Well, hey, we'll kick it off the same every single time. So, Brent, were you born this way? How'd you get into the profession?
Definitely not born this way.
Oh, tell us.
I'm one of the few, I think, that didn't have a family connection. I actually got into this at Baylor.
Brent, wait a minute. You're our first Baylor graduate here on the podcast. Congratulations.
Surely not. Absolutely impossible.
Surely so.
Wow. Okay.
I know there's a lot of Baylor folk out there, but you here for Perusings, you're number one so far.
Okay. So what happened is I wanted to be an economist. And I realized that when you study economics, you, at the same time, are prepared for everything and nothing at all.
Fascinating.
When I realized that I wanted a job, I needed a context. And so I started looking around and had a friend taking some real estate classes. I said, I'm going to sign up for some of those. And so I did. And at the time, there was an appraisal class, and Chuck Delaney was the professor. He was an MAI, and he made me suffer a lot because I skipped the first two classes, overslept.
Oh, man.
And it's an 8 o'clock class. Why did I take an 8 o'clock class? I don't know. So when I finally show up, he decides that he's going to weed me out.
Oh.
So he proceeds to begin each class by grilling me on all of the required reading, everything that we're doing. I knew as soon as I walked in the door, every time, 8 o'clock on the dot, here comes the questions. So you better believe I studied real hard in that class for the rest of the semester. It actually learned to really love that class. And there were valuation was degree plan was valuation was a really big linchpin in everything, and
really
went straight in to appraising right after school. But I went a different direction. The education at Baylor was very commercial appraisal focused. I interviewed for a residential appraisal job, and I liked the sound of it. And so once I started doing that, I didn't actually ever circle back around to commercial. I was like, I really like this. I like the just everything about it. I never looked back.
Brett, that's amazing. So here you are in college, you're headed down the path of becoming an economist. I love what you said about, as you're an economist, you're study and you're aware of everything, and yet there's all these uncertainties out there in the world. And you go and take an appraisal course in college. Did you take multiple courses or just that one?
There was one appraisal course, and then there were other commercial real estate classes that all valuation was a piece. That was the one really solid appraisal class.
That is phenomenal. And so was your person teaching the class, were they a university or professor, or were they like an adjunct, or were they an industry individual?
Well, they had been in the industry. Like I said, he was an MAI. Actually, there were two MAIs that were professors at the time. And so they both had a lot of real world experience and had become professors. And I have not checked back in with Chuck Delaney in many years. So I assume he is retired at this point. I give him all the credit.
So did by chance, I'm just thinking back, maybe some experiences that I had, maybe some others have had, in addition to this individual deciding they're going to weed you out because it was an 8 a.m. class, a little tough to get there as a university student, Were they sharing different assignments and real world application, or was it more theoretical, that course that you took?
It was a mixture of both, for sure. We did a lot of case studies during that class. Actually, my real estate finance class had a lot more of the real world case studies, where valuation was obviously a component. I really felt prepared coming out of that education. It was a real easy transition. So definitely give Baylor all the credit on that, even though they don't have that program anymore. So that made it.
Oh, that's such a common. I hear from individuals that a lot of universities have moved away from appraisal in particular and real estate in general as a concentration, which is sadly disappointing given how big of a contributor to GDP it is.
Absolutely. Well, not to mention that, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, the concepts that you learn in valuation, they really filter into so much of life, so many different industries. So there's just wide-ranging impact to the way we think, the way we use information. I thought that was a little bit of a loss. I don't want to Baylor too hard of a time, but that was a direction I would not have wanted them to go.
You are not alone as a graduate of a university that has had appraisal and or real estate courses that no longer have them. That's typically a comment that comes out. And then the question, of course, is, well, hey, why don't you have them? And any number of reasons come up. But point is, they don't have it now, and thank goodness they have you as a graduate.
Thanks. I'm glad to have graduated there. I can't really say anything bad about it. It was a great experience, great school, and they set me up.
That's a great way to go. They set you up so much so that although you took a number of commercial classes and valuation, you went. What type of firm did you go to work for when you first graduated?
It was nearly a one-man show. There was another guy, but I hardly ever saw him. He picked me up as a trainee, and actually he was a general cert, and we talked a little bit of commercial, but he was mostly residential. And I got a lot of autonomy at that point that I didn't expect.
Oh, that's nice.
It was nice. I felt like I was free to think about what I was doing. I think that worked well for a young guy coming straight out of school, being able to have somebody that was willing to listen to my thoughts on things. Sometimes make fun of me for being young and naive, but but it was a good experience.
Oh, I love that. So here you get to go to work essentially in what you call almost a one-man environment. What was it like showing up? I mean, you're coming out with a lot more probably hands-on education than people just sat through some 7.5 hour day long program. You've been around it for a period of time, and walk us through that transition from the coursework to the practical experience.
Well, this guy would tell me I was definitely the easiest one that he ever trained. The coursework to real life transition, it was interesting because there's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of theory that when you put it into practice, it gets a little messy. And this is where the economics background came in real handy, because in economics, there's no answers to anything. I always knew how I was going to answer a question in the economics context because it always starts with "it depends." And I realized that, okay,
Say that again. It always starts with which?
It depends. That's always the answer.
It depends. Yeah, of course. That's a very, very common one. That's what I thought you said. I wanted to make sure I heard it properly.
Yes. Every economist has two hands. They have to, because you have to say on the one hand, you could go this direction. These are the things that could be involved. Or on the other hand, you might go this other direction. So I realized dealing with the type of data that's available or not available in a lot of cases led to some of those type of squishy analysis. Okay, there's not going to be a simple right answer here. So I'm going to have to think my way through this and track how people are thinking, and sometimes it became some circular reasoning, but you have to start with a model to look at your data through, and then you can start questioning your model with the data. Mm-hmm. It was less cut and dried than I anticipated. And I think some of that is a characteristic of residential that commercial may differ in some ways, that when you're dealing with people and homes and things that they do to their own home, things that they want, hopes, dreams, those kinds of things with the place where they're living their lives, that introduces a lot of different variables.
It really does, doesn't it? I mean, you take into account not just the more traditional activities, but also the atypical and very personalized activities that many people take on.
Yeah. I saw a whole lot of atypical activities that I did not anticipate.
Well, here, Brent, that's a great jumping off point.
Okay.
Those are the stories people love to hear. So tell us about your first crazy home or first crazy assignment as a newly minted real estate appraiser there in Texas.
My first crazy assignment, I was pretty new, and it's still, I think, my craziest assignment. There was a doctor in Dallas working at a hospital downtown who had discovered a warehouse district, particular warehouse district. He had legally converted this warehouse to a single family property that was finished out with pretty nice industrial type, buried a hot tub in the living room floor. But what he discovered is not only was this location great, the warehouse, he had put all windows across the front that look straight out onto the Dallas skyline, which, beautiful view.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And it was just like, okay, this is an amazing location.
Yes.
But there's nothing like this. And so I think I was too young and maybe dumb to realize that I should pass on this assignment. And I said, okay, let's go. Let's figure this out. And so I spent a lot of time thinking outside the box on that one, finding different ways to look at it. I essentially built a lot around the income approach, which I hadn't really learned yet, that not looked upon as favorably as I had hoped. So I pretty sure the loan didn't go anywhere, but it was sure a learning experience, in one that I've never forgotten. In fact, years later, I interviewed for a job with a company, and the person interviewing me, I was actually telling this story because he asked the same thing. It's like, okay, what's the craziest house you've appraised?
Sure.
And he said, oh, I saw that appraisal. They shopped that over here. And
wow.
I remember looking at it and I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And we're not touching this with a 10-foot pole, but good job, I guess. So I ended up getting the job. So it wasn't a deal killer by any means for that.
How did you, having that type of property that someone developed it within its legal use, how did you go about appraising it? I mean, that's a fascinating experience that the vast majority of our peers will never have an opportunity to partake of. And yet, as you touched on, because of your training as an economist and your approach with the education you received, you were able not to immediately get overwhelmed. As you also pointed out, maybe, I think to quote what you said, maybe you're too young and too dumb, or maybe not to take that on. But how did you go about actually solving that equation?
As I recall, I got lucky. I ended up finding a couple of very similar situations at that time.
Oh my goodness.
At that time, there's another warehouse district that was actually redeveloping. And
yes,
I found a storefront. It was actually a retail storefront that had been converted to industrial loft. And I found another warehouse type property. And then really, like I say, I really based a lot on the rents, because there was a lot more rental data available for that sort of odd location, industrial loft type property. Mm-hmm. So that was easier to grab onto. I had a few sales, and I had a couple that I remember thinking, gosh, I did not think I was going to find this sale. And that's really how I ended up approaching it. And so a lot of my adjustments were income-based adjustments for in my sales comparison, because of course I had crazy adjustments in my sales comparison, and it seemed to all work out. And at the time, I thought, okay, well, this is what appraisal's like, and let's move on to the next one. I realized later, looking back on it, it's like I can't believe that my boss let me do that. What was he thinking? Here's the guy 1 year out of school. Let's go. Let's see what you can do.
Not everybody else studies to be an economist, so that was definitely in your favor. But there's not much better feeling than having one of those just seemingly insurmountable valuation challenges, at least at the outset. And then little by little, you start picking off some good information and maybe even some potentially comparable data. You're like, goodness gracious, what a gift that's just been given to you. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's pretty phenomenal. So how long did you stay with that firm?
I stayed there a couple of years, and then I did a very short stint as a review appraiser.
Hey, Brent, real quick, were you a review appraiser for a firm or for a bank?
It was for a lender.
Oh, okay.
And I will say that took me down sort of a path of becoming jaded about the whole industry for quite some time.
What do you mean? Jaded about the industry? That seems shocking, Brent. I can't imagine it.
Yes. I lasted 9 months. I realized that they hired me because I was young and they assumed I was not any good at my job. I realized that's why they hired me, because, okay, he's got a certification and he's very young. We're going to be able to get a lot past him. They didn't get very much past me. So after about 9 months, I got called into my boss's office and, no, this is before I got called in. I got called out in a company-wide meeting for wearing my integrity on my sleeve.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Wow, snap. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know what to say. I was like, thank you?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Let me see. What are the first sentence or two of USPAP say? We're here to protect the public trust. Like, woo, thanks for stating the obvious.
Yeah, and
that's tough.
And so I after the meeting, I had the meeting with my boss, and I just said,
sure,
no, this is not for me.
So goodness.
At that point, I kind of had a really bad taste in my mouth about the type of work I was reviewing, about the company that I was working for. I was like, is this what it's like? It's like, oh, all right, I guess I'll just.
Were they like a production BC lender?
Yeah, they were. It was a mortgage company that got swallowed up into Washington Mutual, and then what is, I think, one of the instruments of their rapid decline after that. So I was glad to be gone.
So, Brent, if I can, just for some of the newer people that may not be aware of the behind the scenes story, when Brent says that he worked for a company, if you will, a lender that had that type of culture, and then it got swallowed up by Washington Mutual. Washington Mutual, ultimately a significant failure, ultimately had to be absorbed by Chase. But they were known for some, at the time, really innovative loans. But there were also people that really took advantage of some of those lending approvals. And the underwriting standards, well, some people even question, were there underwriting standards? Or did you just fill out any random name and some bogus social security number, and then they send you the money to buy the property? So Brent, I appreciate you touching on that, because not everyone remembers that far back to what a debacle that turned into.
It sure did. And I guess it was good education, but that's an education maybe I wish I didn't have. It challenged my youthful idealism.
Got it. Well, how did you funnel that learning? You got your youthful idealism, you've got your exuberance and your portfolio of experience. Now you're like, ooh, don't want to do that again. So what came next?
I worked for another appraiser for a number of years, and then ended up starting my own company with business partner, and I believe that was 2006. So you can imagine starting an appraisal company in 2006.
Wait. So you went to work for somewhere else. So you left somebody, you go to work for a lender, you go back to work for, was that a residential firm or a commercial firm?
Yeah, another residential independent fee appraiser firm. I had a longtime friend, a friend since childhood, that was an appraiser that we've had worked together since high school. So he and I had sort of parallel careers at this point. So we decide, okay, we're kind of a little bit done with this value pressure stuff.
Sure.
So we're gonna go off on our own and create a new thing and look for maybe some big banks, some people that really wanted to know what things were worth. And and that worked out really well, except for the fact that new company, start up, and then the mortgage collapse happens, which is quite the challenge. That was an interesting way to start life as an entrepreneur.
That really is. Wow. So here you've worked for somebody else. It sounds like you had some, at times, similar distasteful experiences at the firm you went to after the lender. And that's when you decided, well, we better maybe go try something on our own and do it a little different.
Yeah.
And you picked perfect timing. I mean, 2006, right?
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
Actually, it wasn't. It could have been much worse. We were very fortunate to kind of fall into a lot of HUD REO work after things went south, and that was a lifesaver when things were rough. Since then, I've been pretty happy with the type of companies that we've been working for. We've had some questionable clients over the years, but my type of early industry experience more and more seems to be the exception rather than the rule.
You know, it's a fantastic statement to be able to make. Not everyone is able to do that. So what was it like when you and your friend from a period of time go out and started up on your own? Was it as easy as you thought it was going to be, or did it were there some of those scary monsters lurking around corners you didn't know that were going to come about from being now not just an appraisal professional, but also someone responsible for operating a business?
You know, it actually worked out very well. At the time, my business partner and I were well suited for a partnership in that he was really good at the people part of the business. He was good at marketing. He was good at interacting with the clients when things got tense. Mm-hmm. If there was some value issues that needed to be addressed, he was a genius at having these conversations. So when I was about to just explode, he would just take the phone and let me handle this, and he would do that. And so that was great, and I could really focus on where my strengths were, which was creating new processes and train new people. How can we be efficient? How can we make this work from an appraisal standpoint? And so that worked well for many years.
Well, that's a wonderful opportunity when it presents itself and has the ability to go some distance. A lot of people, much like some of the individuals they probably dated in their life, look good at the start, but after a while, you're like, woo, don't know what I was thinking back then, but sure didn't turn out to what I thought it was going to be. So it seems that you all had a good mix.
Well, we did have a split eventually.
Oh no, there was a falling out of love.
You know, it really was more of a life circumstance situation. Okay. He had his wife fell backwards into ridiculous money at her job.
That sounds terrible, Brent. I don't know anyone in the valuation and appraisal profession that would ever have to be so unfortunate to fall into just a ridiculous amount of money. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so his incentive to do appraisals immediately went to zero. So pretty quickly it was like, okay, you're no longer interested in showing up at work, so we're gonna have to separate, and which was fine. I say it's fine. It sucked. The bottom line. So really, my learning curve as a business owner didn't start until he left. And then I realized, okay, now this is all on me, and I need to rethink this whole thing. I would say that really started my improvement as an appraiser, and my sort of involvement in the industry started then. That was really kind of a good catalyst for me to move outside of my own four walls, see what other people are doing. It was right after that happened, I went to my first appraisal conference and realized, there's a lot of really interesting appraisers out here that have a lot of interesting thoughts, and there's some people that really care. And so, okay, yeah, this is good for me. And so when that happened, I started to write. I can't remember if I wrote my first article before or after that conference, but I just realized that, okay, I think there's people out here that are thinking along the same lines as me. I think my first article that I wrote was on the URAR. I compared it to the Ford Pinto.
Oh, wow. Ford Pinto. Well, here, please, because since it's a podcast, we're going to have to invite you to give a little verbal description of a Ford Pinto, because not everybody knows what that baby is, and we're not on YouTube. How would you describe a Ford Pinto?
I think somebody's going to have to look it up in order to really understand just how interesting this vehicle was. It was quite ugly and would explode hit from behind too quickly. So not the best vehicle, not Ford's shining moment. And I began to realize that, okay, I think the URAR is really done. It needs to be done. To the credit of the GSEs, they have worked on a new URAR. That'll be another topic for another day, possibly, because I've got my own thoughts on that. But
yeah, that's a different topic. There's other podcasts for that good stuff.
Yeah, but the response that I got was, yeah, there's people out there that are listening and thinking about this stuff. I feel like I started to find my place in the industry. That's really kind of led me up to where I am right now.
I definitely appreciate you touching on that. I think that's an interesting reference for people that may not realize Ford Pintos. If I'm not exactly tight on the facts, but I seem to recall that Ford Pintos had the gas tank at the rear, and there was maybe some safety information that either wasn't paid attention to, or you can do the research and figure out some of the other shenanigans. And you got rear-ended in a Pinto. That baby exploded and you died. Hence the reference to the Ford Pinto that Brent has brought us here. That is phenomenal. So you're taking an opportunity to do some writing. And how did that go for you?
Well, yeah. I love to write. I think I've always loved to write. I do a little bit of writing in my spare time, and I write better than I speak. Is really what it is. If I can take the time to sit down and put words to it, I feel like I can get my point across if I take my time. If I don't have a word count maximum that I'm dealing with, I feel like I can get my point across. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm definitely doing a lot more speaking these days. So hopefully my clarity in speaking will match and hopefully exceed that, because that's really what I want to get across right now, or what I want to do right now is be a voice in the industry for improvement. I want to be helpful. That's really what I want to be. If I can write things, talk about things, and teach things in a way that will help people to become better appraisers, maybe better people, that's sort of where my headspace is.
I think that's phenomenal. And it's really encouraging to hear that you're able to take something that you do well, which is right, and do so in a way to help others out in the process. I mean, I can appreciate that, maybe you don't have to worry about talking. You just, write out what you're going to say in advance and read the teleprompter. Then you don't have to worry. You got all the words already done for you.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I taught my first class. I had a lot of notes and immediately ditched them and just started talking.
Okay.
So that works well too. I had a professor once that he taught using the Socratic method, and where he just would ask questions and keep asking questions. I love that. I just to help people to work their way to a new thought, to a new understanding. It's like, man, what a great way to do that. So if I have the opportunity to pause and ask a question, I will, because I think it's so much better to engage a student that way.
I totally agree. It makes a world of difference when people get engaged in a conversation versus just get talked at the whole time. So your middle name is Socrates, is what you're telling us.
No, I do not take on any lofty titles, names. I don't have a lot of letters. I'm just a regular guy.
How has your interest in and talent for writing really supported you here in this phase of your professional appraisal and valuation career?
Well, I think writing articles has connected me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I really think that that's it. When I look back, I thought it was conveying an idea. As I think about it, really, I'm just starting conversations because what idea can you really fully convey in 500 words? Not much. And even some longer things I've written, it's really starting a conversation because life is complicated. Every issue we deal with is complicated. Snippets and sound bites and pithy phrases, they just don't cut it. We're just going to have conversations. And I realize that people who read an article and reach out, even if they reach out in criticism, they're starting a conversation. And that's great because even if you engage, I know a lot of people will talk about the dregs of the internet chat rooms and things get dark out there.
They do.
But on some level, it's like the hot. I'd rather you be hot or cold than lukewarm. I feel like, gosh, the people, at least the people that are out there complaining, at least they're engaging.
Yes.
And that's okay. And you know what? Maybe we can take the person that's engaging and start to turn that conversation into something more productive. And then we're learning. And then I'm learning from them. Like, why are you upset? What is it that you're upset about? Okay, let's talk about it. I think that's something that we need as an industry, and writing is a good way to sort of start those conversations, engage.
I think that's a great point you make, which is it's one thing to have an opinion. It's another to invest the energy to share that opinion. And it's another level to actually do it in a productive manner. And I appreciate some of the things you're doing, especially the conscious choice and the intentional choice to share some of your learning and perspective in the form of writing and publishing for the benefit of uplifting the whole industry.
I'm glad that's something that I've had the opportunity to do. I'll give the Appraisal Buzz some credit on that. Joan Trice published my first article, and she didn't have to do that. She could have just said, appraisal forms in Ford Pinto. That's kind of funny. Oh, trash. She could have easily done that, but she's like, here's somebody nobody's ever heard of. Let's just throw their article out there. That was cool. There was no reason. She didn't need to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Any coming attractions? Any book getting published anytime soon? Going to become a big time famous author?
No, definitely not. I wish. Actually, no, I don't wish. The things that I really feel most passionate about writing are things that I would not want credit for.
What do you mean by that, Luis?
Well, if you want to get sort of outside the appraisal sphere.
Yeah, please.
I feel like some of the more important things about us as people, or even spiritually, if I contribute something to that, I don't want it to be about me or anything I have to say. If I write something and it opens up a space for you to consider or grow or develop as a person in whatever area, whether it be professionally or spiritually or any other way, that's not about me. Yes. At that point. I would feel like that I would want to be like an agent of blessing somebody in that. So same way with the writing. Like, of course, there's like a marketing piece to some of this stuff. It's like, I actually am teaching classes and I would like to get students, so writing does help with that. But at the same time, I actually, if I'm writing about something, like, I really just want people to open their minds to it. And okay, well, it's not that I'm trying to make a point, okay, I'm right, you're wrong, or like, some things may come out like that, but that's not my intention. It's to, okay, well, let's start a conversation to make things better. And professionally, that's in the appraisal world. But really, that's a secondary issue to the desire for us to be better as people is my bigger goal.
Oh, I get that. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's one of the beautiful things that the opportunity of this podcast provides, which is, our eyes only see in a certain dimension, and it's at a fixed place in time. But through a conversation like this, we gain the appreciation for just how much more diverse everyone is in general, and specifically, something of interest to you, and the opportunity that you spend your time, your effort, your energy on a little bit more than appraisal, as everyone else does as well. And yours is in the area of the importance of human beings on a path of growth and learning and progress. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Brent.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I think what you're doing is important to that. Your focus on the person instead of the topic, I found refreshing when I first found out about that, because people are like a combination of art and artists. Because when you're looking at a person, you're seeing this completely different perspective on life. When you go to the art museum and you look at that painting, you're seeing the artist's perspective on this that you wouldn't have had before. And so everybody's got their own perspective. They've got their own history, their own traumas, things that just make us who we are. And, all those shape our viewpoint and how we view the world.
Thank you for that recognition and acknowledgement. And I definitely resonate with what you're saying. I definitely agree with you on that. And one of the things I appreciate about you, Brent, and there's a number of people out there, but there's not as many as there could be, which is going back to your original education and kind of thinking about the profession in general, is your, I'll call it fact-based or data-based approach towards solving problems and delivering credible solutions. And love to hear a little bit more about some of the other things you've done in terms of trying to create a better result or better conclusion in valuation.
Sure. Yeah. At a certain point, it's always good to deconstruct things every now and then. We just keep building on the status quo. That's just the normal flow of things. And it's good sometimes just to take things down a few extra levels, sort of excavate a little bit more. Why are we here? What are we really doing? And when I did that, it changed some of my approach to the appraisal problem, to the process, to really what it means, what we're actually accomplishing. And on the one hand, that definitely led me toward data-centric approaches. But at the same time, I realized that those data-centric approaches don't mean anything if they're not on a foundation that's tied to psychology and sociology and economics. It's like, how are people behaving? What are they doing? And why are they doing that? And once I know how they're making decisions, then I can model that into the data. And now I can understand my data instead of trying to reinvent the wheel with data all the time and saying, okay, well, let's let the data tell us what people are doing. Well, sometimes data is good at that and sometimes it's not. That sort of has morphed into different things. Right now, where my head is at is there's sort of a overarching class that deals with that. That's called creating formulas that work. And that's where I give kind of like a big picture perspective on this, and then show how to model it and kind of give people a framework for, okay, here's a way to model human behavior and combine it with your data. What I did, the other thing that I've kind of been working a lot on lately is solar valuation. I sort of took that same approach to deconstructing that whole problem and building it up from scratch with the same philosophy and the same approach. And that I've been just teaching on my own, small batch teaching. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that at this point. Kind of working on it. There's some different directions that I'd like to go, but yeah, that's really what's keeping me busy and where my professional direction's going right now.
That's really encouraging to hear that out of your own personal interest to better understand, as well as taking a bigger picture approach to, in this case, real estate valuation, and specifically residential real estate valuation, with the intersections of psychology, sociology, and economics, that yes, the results do show up in data, but that doesn't always mean that the results that we see, we fully understand.
That's absolutely right. It's funny. I'm working on a speech right now. I'm going to be talking at the ACTS conference in April.
Oh, yeah, it's coming up soon. Congratulations.
Thanks. I was trying to think of a different angle to approach this topic. I don't want to just keep saying the same things over and over again. So I stumbled upon a topic that really resonated with me with all this, and it's really, I don't know if maybe this is too detailed or too boring for this particular topic.
Brandon, pardon me, I'm interrupting you, and I know I'm doing that. But part of that is on the podcast, it's an opportunity for people to be able to hear, to incorporate, and ultimately maybe even act upon some spark of information or of intuition or of excitement that they hear from someone else. And they're like, wow, I didn't know that was possible. Or, hey, it's great to hear that opportunity exists. Or, oh, goodness, look how much more I'm like Brent versus not like Brent. And there's so many more pathways I might pursue. So, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. And then we'll be, after that, we'll probably start moving to wrap up. But tell us a little about that, Brent.
Yeah. Well, I was doing some reading about structured data versus unstructured data. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay.
I actually am, but most people are not. So give us like a third grader understanding of structured data versus unstructured data.
Okay. So in this move and all the sort of the impetus towards data science, when appraisers are applying a lot of these techniques, they need to realize that there's limitations to the data, and one of those limitations is the type of data. Structured data is data that's easily quantified and manipulated. So your gross living area, your lot size, bedroom count, that's all structured data. Then there's other data, which is unstructured, and it's not so easily quantifiable. And you have to understand what to do with that. That would be like quality and condition. Everybody knows that quality and condition, that's huge. Those are some of your huge variables and how much a house is going to be worth, but it's unstructured. So you have to learn how to deal with that, how to convert unstructured data sometimes or whatever way you want to deal with it in order to account for those things. And what people do often is they ignore the unstructured data and they just deal with all the structured data that's easy to deal with, easy to manipulate. It's there's so many programs that are so good at dealing with structured data. And okay, well, here I've got all these cool programs, all the structured data is in there, and I'm drawing conclusions. Wait, you've got all the unstructured data you haven't dealt with yet. So we can't ignore that. And so how do we as appraisers understand that and acknowledge those differences while also, let's keep moving toward this data-centric approach. Let's leave a little bit more of what we would have called the art of appraisal in the rearview mirror and put a little bit more science around it, but at the same time realizing that science can only get you so far. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, it totally makes sense. To me, for other people, they're much smarter than I am. They probably didn't need the extra explanation, but I'm a little slow at times.
Okay, so I'm glad I didn't botch that too bad.
No, not at all. Thank goodness I made it to the fourth grade, so I got a little better. I'm a little bit ahead of the third grade explanation, so I appreciate making it easier for me. That helps out a ton. Well, Brent, we always love to hear from our peers. Given everything you've learned and your background, your education, being an esteemed graduate of Baylor University, as you look out over the future, the next couple of years, maybe 3 to 5 years, what are you hopeful about, or what are you looking forward to as it relates to the industry?
Okay. Well, we've got some hurdles for sure. Just a few. It's easy to look at the hurdles, and I, just like everybody else, I get wrapped up in those myself. But what I've noticed and just recently kind of taking some steps to connect more and more, what I'm realizing, I'm meeting so many, especially younger appraisers that are just like top-notch people. They want to do it right. They're just hungry to learn. And I'm impressed with so many people that I've come in contact with, like some of my students. I'm just like, man, you're asking great questions. Like, I just sat down with a group of younger appraisers not too long ago, and they were peppering me with questions, and I was just humbled. Number one, I was like, you are,
wow, that's amazing.
You guys are all smart. You're top-notch people. The fact that you're here engaging at this level in this industry at your age, it's like, wow, I wish I would have had that when I was your age. And I'm telling you, it's like, okay, I think if these are the people that are entering the industry, that are learning and growing in the appraisal field, I think we might be all right.
That's encouraging. That is very encouraging. That's very encouraging. For those of us that also know you as a author and creator, any other things you're kind of looking out for or looking forward to over the next 3 to 5 years that you might be creating?
Well, like, this is just pretty new. I've written a lot, not a lot. I've written a little about the short-term rental issue. I've done a little bit of research in there, and I am putting a little bit of work into that right now. I don't know. Maybe I'm ADD. Does it sound like this? I think I sound ADHD. I've got too many different projects, too many different things. But this is the way my brain works.
Brent, that's what's Trello for. You create a little board, you just post it up there and let it sit there, and you come back to it if you want to.
Yeah. You would not believe the amount of scratch paper I've got cluttering my desk of different things. Something comes into my mind, I scratch down some notes on it.
Oh, Brent, come on, man. Mind map, buddy. Go to mindmap.com. Use that, or better yet, just like me here on this wall. You can't see it, actually. I'm pointing at it. It's just a whole wall. It has nothing on it. No art, no frame stuff. It's just a place to just get stuff off the desk. But over there where I can kind of see and allow the mind to do some visual connection.
Yeah, I need to try out some of that. I'm tactile. I like actually writing physically and holding it. I feel like I can conceptualize better when I want to have it there. But I could learn and grow. I could try new things. So I could try those new apps and see what happens.
Appreciate it, man. Well, good stuff. Well, Brent, I just want to again thank you for joining us here on Perusing's The Power of Values podcast. It's always such a gift to hear just the professional path that others have been on and kind of how they're connecting the dots and what they're dealing with and what they're doing and what they're looking ahead to. And definitely, you're a unique contributor, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your time, and man, what a great conversation. I hope other people will enjoy listening to us. I know if I was a fly on the wall, I would have enjoyed listening. So hopefully your listeners will feel the same way.
I would like to believe so. And obviously, please take Brent's cue right now. And if you haven't done it already, share this with one other person. And, we have literally seen our community double over the past year, and we have no doubt it'll double again. The ripple effect is substantial, and you get an opportunity to be a contributor in that. You get to be cause in the matter of these impacts on people's lives by getting to share these stories. So as we bring this episode to a close, thank you again. And until the next one, go out. And as we heard Brent share with us a little bit today, have a positive impact in the world. Consider your path of growth and learning and progress to help contribute to expanding your mind. Brent, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing life paths and achievements of our guests. Don't forget to like us on LinkedIn and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.